Welcome to the Riff. Today, Jeremy and Justin sit down and talk about the Enneagram. I would like to think that I'm the best parts of all the numbers on the Enneagram, but I don't think it works like that. We hope today is helpful. Thanks for listening.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Riff, and I'm excited because we've never yet talked about the Enneagram.
I know, and that's crazy to me.
So today we're going to.
Great.
So I like that. So this is whether you're listening to us, joining us on this episode from internationally or very much nationally. We are glad you're here with us. And we have some resources we're going to drop in the show notes that we have talked extensively about the Enneagram. Mm-hmm. And we have a series.
Yes.
What was the?
Out of the Shadows.
Out of the Shadows.
And that'll be on the show notes. You can click on that. That's I believe a 10-part? Did we do 10-part on that? That's a long series, but it was good.
I think it's the longest series we've ever done at North Point.
Yes. But highly listened to and watched.
Yeah.
Very, very impactful for those who have gone through that. And there's also an Enneagram class that we will link on the show notes as well that you walk through.
Yeah. So a couple of things. We have some options for a couple different classes I think are going to be helpful. You're going to find on there, whether it's, hey, how do I know more about North Point, the mission of North Point, where I fit? We call that new or next.
We call it next.
Yeah.
You can call it new if you want to.
I never said new.
No,
you said
I
new.
know. I'm just saying, if you want to, you're running this thing. You call it whatever
I
you
would
want.
say if you're new,
you
want to check out next. But it's one of those classes. It's online. It's actually helpful. What I like about that format, you can do it at your space, your pace. You can be like, hey, 12 minutes. Kids need me right now. Push pause. It's all good.
Yep.
Or watch it in all one shot. We have some really cool things. How do I share my faith in a way? How do I have relationship with people in a way that I can impact them as well? Mm-hmm. Really cool things there on our resource page. We'll link the Enneagram class. That's a class I actually did in a work setting for a local company, a North Pointer. But the difference between that's a little bit more time, and then our series every week we take on a different person in Scripture that while they didn't take the Enneagram test,
you don't know that.
They might have.
You don't know that.
I really don't.
Okay.
If they had, this is our best guess of what that'd be. So you'll find those there. So we're gonna hit just a quick snapshot of it. Justin, we've been talking Enneagram for 6 years,
long time,
here, and so what we can do is just kind of kick off each of these different things, and then we can kind of share some thoughts, observations on it. Hopefully it's a great primer for those of you who might be interested, and those of you who are maybe Enneagram fanatics, then you might be interested in some more further study. But really quickly, the Enneagram is something that became a tool for me when Dr. Swift, who's been on our show before, he introduced this to me. This is something that he worked with Dr. Gary Smalley back in the 80s and 90s, working with a personality inventory to help married couples live with each other without losing their mind. And so they had written something together on the Enneagram. He ended up finding this to be a helpful tool for almost all of his therapy relationships. And so he introduced this to me. There are a lot of great inventories out there. What I loved about it is it seemed to read my soul. So Enneagram is simply a word that just means a nine-sided picture. And there's a lot of talk about, is this a Christian tool? Is this not a Christian tool? And I would say it's a tool that can be used in a way to explore your soul. It's probably a tool that can be used as a way to be like a Christian version, of just some type of superstition or something. But that's not the intention. So we're going to walk through the Enneagram today. The best origination that I feel like is fair to look at it, even outside of any Christian authors. The most common origination is that the Enneagram was developed in the 300s or 400s by the Desert Fathers, which were a group of people who lived separate. They didn't want to be polluted by the world, or they wanted to be protected, even physically, from a threatening empire. So they lived in the desert, and they used the Enneagram as a catechism, as a teaching tool to teach their kids. Here are 9 sin magnets. We all are prone to wander, or as the psalmist says, search my heart, O God, see if there be any wicked way in me. Quick answer is there is. And so which of these areas, if left uninspected, could short circuit God's best plan for my life? So that's the Enneagram. So that's been something that's been helpful for me as a window. Justin, talk to us a little bit before we dive into the different numbers. What's been your experience with the Enneagram, and how's it been helpful?
It's been great. You brought it to the team probably 6 years ago, somewhere in that space. Yeah. That's where I was introduced to it. You had the team take the test, walk through it. For me, I know that it felt like Myers-Briggs or DISC or anything like that. I'm like, whatever, just tell me the number. And then Dr. Swift came in with the team and walked through it. And there was honestly a moment I'm like, what? Like, this is a little bit too detailed for my liking. Because, it's definitely, it got into spaces and places that I think personality tests can be super helpful. I didn't really take it as a personality test.
Okay.
It wasn't, I looked at it after we walked through that day, like, oh, this could actually be something helpful. Like, it's not telling me like, you say it a lot, like, I'm a 3, and we'll get into that. We'll get into all the numbers. But it's not like, yay, I'm a 3. It's like, oh, I could probably wreck my marriage by lying to my wife. That's probably the
right.
I don't find that on Myers-Briggs. I didn't find that in the DISC, right? And there's similarities within it because it does talk about your personality and all this kind of stuff. But honestly, I walked away from that day thinking this might be something that I use outside of work.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah.
My wife ended up taking it. I don't know if you're supposed to like number your children. I don't know if that's helpful.
I think you're not legally allowed to do any weird experiments on them until they're 18, but then it's fair game.
It's such an interesting thought process knowing that they're built in such a way, right? That it's okay for them to be different. Like, we've got 2 girls. They are drastically different from one another, right? And I mean, I don't know what their numbers are. I'm going to guess, right? That one of them's like a 4, 7-ish type of thing, and one of them's like a 1 or an 8, which you'll see as you kind of walk through are very different. But it's helpful for us to realize that people are built in different ways with different giftings, different drawbacks. And I think the Enneagram does a really, really great job of explaining that in a way that's helpful and very understandable. Yeah. So for me, it was a pretty big game changer. And then also just in the workplace, understanding where people are coming from, what that number is, what it means, what their tendencies are. We talk a lot about assuming positive intent at North Point on staff. Most of the time we love to think they're out to get me. They're doing something. Actually, they're doing something because a 2 is more prone for this, this, and this. Right. And you're like, oh, well, let's walk through it in that. So it's just been an absolute blessing for at least my family, for myself. Yeah. So I'm excited for you to walk through this. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're like on the fence about Enneagram because you're nervous, is this dealing with something that's not helpful? There are a lot of sites out there, blogs out there that are anti-Enneagram stuff. You know, as a pastor, I'm just saying probably the most requested topic that I speak on to other churches and groups of churches is on the Enneagram. And again, like I said, I think it's a tool. I think if you pull the string far enough to any of the people who are opposed to it because of a Christian reasoning, I think it breaks down. I just believe it's a great tool that we can use as a window to the soul. I'm not like a big fan of like trying to promote Enneagram, but what I am is promoting our awareness of our own shadow side. And I think the Enneagram does help us with that. So that's I think that's helpful. A couple of things about Enneagram is is the Enneagram is not to be a label. It's not to be something we say, oh, you're such a this, okay, and then try and box people into something. Some people don't like any test because they're like, I don't want to be labeled. And they're right. We shouldn't, it's not a label and it's not a lid. It's not saying, okay, I'm always going to be stuck this way. We should never do that. It should be a light. It should be an invitation to understand other people better. And the other thing is, any type of time we communicate, and we've talked about this in a weekend series before, is if we're playing catch with the ball, what I throw is what you catch. But if we're playing catch with Play-Doh, what I throw, you have the ability to shape into whatever, any type of different thing. And you all know that's true because there's been times where you said something and someone was offended. You're like, what? And they say, well, you did this and this. And you're like, I didn't say that, or I didn't mean that. In the Enneagram, if we allow it, helps us to understand every interaction we have with someone, they're receiving something and shaping these messages or lack of messages in a way that's different than we intended because they come from a different spot. So let's just walk through the 9. We'll do it really quickly. Obviously, you can take a test. We'll drop some links there on the show notes about some places to take a test. I think they're all the same. The paid ones, you usually ask more questions, and it's usually more scientific background to it. And so, but any test could be helpful to get the conversation going. There's also a great book we recommend that Ian Cron and Susan Stabile wrote, "The Road Back to You," and it's a great book as well. So, but there's nine different perspectives. The thought is that these are 9 different ways people see the world. Also, 9 different categories of sin that you could almost systematically put all sin into. So the first one, and there's different names for them, but we'll call it for today's purposes the perfectionist. The Enneagram 1 is the perfectionist. They're the type that brings incredible order. They're the type that has a system. Systems tend to naturally be a strong suit for someone who's an Enneagram 1. And their great gift to the world is they've got a sense for justice. They see things as the way it could be done. They see things right. They can see, well, it's white and black. There's no gray area for a 1. And every side has a shadow side, and for the 1, the shadow there is this sense of burning anger. And that anger could have a short fuse. And it's funny because these are people who usually do everything right. They're typically the kids that didn't have to be told a lot of times. You tell them once, they're always going to know this is the right way to do things. But their anger could be when other people don't do it right, or especially when other people don't do it right, but then get right things, even though they do the wrong way. And so a 1 under the surface, you can have this anger boiling, and we see that in scripture of self-righteousness. That could easily be a deal. So that's a quick thought of what the perfectionist is. And I'll probably just bounce them to you. Any observations you have on the 1?
Well, I think that when I was talking about in the workplace, I think when you're dealing with a 1, I think it was helpful for us as a team to understand, oh, they're not getting mad at me. Right. They're getting mad at the situation because the anger was probably already there because the situation that we're walking through is not a black and white situation. Right. So I think that it opens up the conversation and goes a little bit deeper than just the surface of like, just get with it, man. Why are you so mad? Right. It's like, oh, you kind of built this way. You really like things in order. You really love things to make sense and logical sense. And this situation might not be that. So actually, you're not mad at me. You're mad at the situation. Let's hug. Yeah. I don't know. We don't hug every time, but
we should do that more often.
We should. Yeah. I think we should.
So, I do think that order is such a gift. And whether it's at home, there's a right way to load the dishwasher. There's a right way to keep the living room, right? At work, I think anyone who's been in a larger than 4-person work environment understands, even though policies aren't always exciting, but they help us get best result when they're done right. Yeah. And so 1s are God's gift to help us take this goodness and produce continued goodness. And we talk about things like predictable success. If we can create the right system, we can continue to experience the right thing. So
that's right.
So 1. A 2 we'll call the helper. The helper is someone who is naturally nurturing, loves to take care of others. probably loves to take care of others even more than people love being taken care of. And that's all right. There's a fine line between nurturing and smothering, but 2s often could be the first to volunteer. They love to serve, a lot of times like to be behind the scene, but they said the darkness for a 2 is pride. Which is ironic because a 2 doesn't look prideful because they like to be behind the scenes. But what it means is a lot of times they will serve in order to be seen. Like they want to serve, but you'd better notice them, right? Because they're the kind, you heard about the silent ones that blow up, right, one day because they serve, and all of a sudden, if you feel unappreciated, you naturally don't know what to do with it. The 2s are God's love letter to this earth. I believe they most naturally display the love and the service of Christ. They're the most compassionate naturally, but also we just need to remember it's arrows out. We don't serve to be seen. We serve because it's the right thing to do. Well, what are your observations on the 2?
I think 2, my wife is a 2.
Okay.
So that's been helpful, knowing that when you talk about love languages, right? The 5 love languages, words of affirmation and quality time are her 2 pieces. And then you look into the Enneagram and you're like, oh, okay. Well, maybe you like thank yous, really?
Yes.
Okay, well, maybe I need to say thank you a little bit more often. Maybe I should say it when I think it.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge help. You also look at the organization that we're in. The Dream Center is a magnet for 2s.
Yes, it is.
I mean, you look at that and you're just like, oh, 2.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to even see organizationally how people are attracted to different even pieces within their work life. So yeah, it's been an interesting one to watch on that.
Let's hit 3s, and then I want to talk about the relationship 3s and 2s because we're both 3s, both married to a 2.
Yep.
3s would be the achiever. The achiever is focused on winning and doing it in a way they'll still be elected mayor when they win. So hang on to that because we're going to talk about one that's similar, but the process is way different. 3s want to win. They don't do things they enjoy; they do things they're good at. And so they could be very image conscious. So they're going to marketing's good. They're going to be typically energetic, magnetic. They're going to focus on the feelings of those in the room. And it could be negative because they want other people to feel like they're special. And so, but they'll manage the feelings and how things land. The downside of the 3 is deceit. That's the sin. It is twisting the facts the first time you know it's an exaggeration. By the second or third time you say it, you're convinced it's the truth, right? And so it's twisting the facts. It could be, you can take the strength of bringing the positive to a dark situation, but the deceit comes in when you stop addressing the negative situation, because there's a time where you need to be brutally honest with the facts, and that could come out in conversation. So we're 3s, we're recovering 3s. What have you learned about yourself through the Enneagram?
I don't think I've ever told a story that's true. meaning.
Right.
There's always an element to my story.
You're an artist, baby. Yeah.
So walking through this now, I'll bring up my wife one more time. That'll be it. But I'll tell a story, and then she'll be like, "Was all that true?" I'll be like, "No." This part was different. She's like, "Why are you doing that?" I was like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of true. It's just a little embellished.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it adds a, it's like adding pepper.
Yes.
Right? You don't want to blend.
Oh, kick to that chick. No, yeah. Okay, so last night, Leanne's a 2, right? But she has a lot of 1 in her, a lot of what's right, what's wrong, right? And so I'm talking to someone, and I'm not trying to impress them intentionally. I think I'm just naturally gifted at trying to impress you. And so I'm talking to a guy at a conference, and he said, we're talking about the voice, right? This translation of scripture. And he's asking, I said, well, I got a friend who was on the editing deal. And she says, she's listening, she goes, he's not your friend, he's an acquaintance. I'm like, well, yeah, but okay, whatever. Like, I'm not lying.
No.
But I'm friendly with a guy. And I said to the guy, I said, hey, I'm going to say you're friends, 100%. Right, from now on.
100%.
And so then in that same conversation with the guy, he said, hey, you ever speak in Arizona? And I was like, I spoke at a camp a long time ago. She's like, did you speak or were you doing drama? That was a season of my life where I traveled and did drama. I said, no, okay, you're right. I didn't speak. I did drama. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
and she's
details
like,
aren't a huge
and she's
deal.
like, no, that matters. You're lying. So it's bad. It's bad.
not great.
Search my heart, oh God.
So in the work setting,
Yeah.
So in one of the previous podcasts on tension,
Yeah.
I brought up the idea of, specifically for me, I just keep talking, because as I've learned about threes and walked through that, there is that tendency to where, as soon as we walk out of this meeting, even though it's a really tough one, I really want you to like me,
Right.
Like I
Right.
really, and by that I mean I'm going to win at this. Like,
Right.
you're
Win
gonna
the
walk out and be
conversation.
like, man, Justin, he is.
Yeah. He was in a tough
great.
spot. He had to let me go, but boy, he's a good dude.
What a really good. And now, looking back, I've probably hurt those relationships more
Right.
doing that, because
Yes.
they've walked out being like, he didn't tell me the truth.
Right.
What in the world? So
Right.
it's been helpful. It's been hard to walk through, but I think that once you really dig into that and you do
Right.
some work on it, it's helpful and embarrassing, but it's helpful.
You never want to shortchange God's gift of bringing positive to a tough situation by not addressing the reality that does need to be addressed, right? Because then we lose credibility and trust. And so even not intentionally. So the three, a lot of threes are kind of drawn to business or even leadership positions just naturally. It doesn't make us better leaders. It just makes us more excited to volunteer, right? So it's very important for the health of the organization we're in or the families we're a part of that we dig in. So the four, statistically, I don't know why in America, this is the lowest percentage of Americans who take these tests land here. It's the fours, people who don't want to be roped in. It's the artist or the individualist, probably because the artist is the least likely to say, I want to take a test where I'm going to fit within 9 boxes, right? It's the artist. It's creative. It's a mind that sees things that most minds don't. Matter of fact, most minds will dismiss the land that fours live in. They see in color. They feel deeper and more meaningful than anyone else. They can cry at a commercial. They can get locked into a movie because they have the ability to so focus on a thought or on a picture that becomes a very real world for a four. So very creative, very amazing. And so we have this sense of wonder, but the dark side for a four is envy. And it's not like I want what you have. It's scarier than that. A lot of times for a four, it's I want who you are. I don't understand why you can connect with the world, and I feel so different and isolated. So the four can be driven to isolation because most of the rest of the population doesn't understand a four, could easily dismiss a four, and a four becomes safer in their own world, in their mind, than trying to fit into a world of reality. And so we really need to, if you're a four, need to understand you're a gift to God. You got to stand up, even if you stand out, right? You've got to figure out a way to add your view to the world because you help us, you see a better place. You help us to get there. And those of you who aren't a four, we've got to make room for fours, make room for this. But that's a four. Yeah.
We have very few fours on the team.
Yeah.
At this point right now, I don't know if we have any. Is that correct?
I don't think anyone who would say that's my core spot. Yeah.
I don't think so. The last one we had on the team, though, I loved going to coffee with him.
Yeah.
Because it is that. It's this completely different foreign viewpoint that you're like, that's brilliant. Why don't you speak more?
Yeah. But they need to be invited out because they've learned the world isn't safe because they're so different.
Oh, my goodness.
So... and that's why I think the Enneagram is important, not because like, I want to find out who I am, right? And you should, because we've got some natural tendencies to isolate people. I want to find out how people tick and be more curious about them. Five is the observer or the wise one. That's what they would call it, but we'll call them the observers. Five are people who they just can't get enough information. They just love the internet, man. They could be their portal to passing time like crazy. Documentaries, they don't have time for fluff. They just want real content, right? They want deep conversations. A five's the sin there, the gap there is greed. greed, and not greed like I want all your money, though it can be that, but it's usually like I've earned this wealth of information. I'm not just going to send it to you, right? I'm not going to give you this. You go earn it. Okay. You go read that book, you lazy sucker, right? Is the 5 could naturally while being unchecked, hoard the information. You can be in a room and you can ask the question to the room, hey, what should we do in this situation? The 5 is not going to raise their hand, and the 3 is going to raise their hand, even though they don't have a clue what the question was. They just want to talk, right? But the 5 is going to spend the whole time thinking, why are these idiots not just asking me directly? I know the answer. And so we got to learn how do we share and fight that tendency to have greed and not share what we know. So what are some of the benefits of having a 5 on the team?
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
Whenever a 5 leaves the team, you realize how much knowledge and information went with them.
Yes.
Which is very interesting.
Yes.
Right? One of my best friends is a 5 and was on the team previously, and we'll still meet, and he'll bring stuff up from years ago about North Point. And I'm like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You haven't worked there in years. What in the world? How do you have this knowledge base?
Wow.
So they're incredible. It's also interesting to see a 5. Every 5 I've met almost in conversation, there will be long pauses. And I've always but they're just processing. I don't know if they're storing that in some weird bank they have in their brain, right. But it's so funny. We'll talk and it'll just be a 4-second pause and then start again. Did you just log all of that? Are you some type of binary computer? It's
probably also picking out which file do I want to pick from, because I got so many that I've watched over the years.
Yes.
So if you're a 5, learn to share.
Yeah.
Learn to share without being personally asked, because you see what other people don't see. You know what other people don't know.
Yep.
And so we need to be aware of that. A 6, what we'll call the loyalist or the faithful one. The 6 tends to, they have this ability to be loyal to a person, to a mission. They're all in. The challenge is fear. They could have pre-traumatic stress disorder. They have the ability to freak out long before you need to, right? Make great insurance, structures and thought processes, because they can see, okay, they're great trip planners. They understand what do we need, how do we prevent the obstacles. In a planning meeting, a 6 can really help you say, okay, hey, what's going on? But fear, while it's a gift to explore options to give us more faith, fear, when unchecked, becomes just a quick no. So talk to us a little bit about 6s.
6s are great to have on the team, specifically in the sense that you're speaking about, because I think that there is a huge importance that they bring to the logistical side of any kind of strategy.
Yeah.
But I think you're also speaking on the fear part is accurate, and I've seen a lot of times where that will take over the personality.
Yeah.
Right? To where the self-talk then becomes negative and fearful. And so if they can stay in that space, to where a 3 for me, where I become a liar, right. If I can just stay a little bit on this side of using that for fun and using it for energy, can they use that fear for planning and and not for a debilitating type of situation? But they are crucial in seeing things forward, because they're going to see things that you don't see. Right. Even if those things might never happen, you at least have a plan B, and I promise you're going to use a plan B at some point, right? So great to have in the room.
I think a 6 who's healthy and can project possible shortcomings of a plan could give you more confidence to go forward, because now you've evaluated the risks. Now you're more prepared for the failures. And now we can go forward thinking, man, we've got someone who's speaking to these things, who's already prepared a plan. Now, what I need to watch is, because I'm all about feelings sometimes, if I'm unhealthy leading as a 3, anything that's less than, Jeremy, that's the best idea I've ever heard, could be a voice of Satan, of negativity in my life, and I don't need that, right? So I need to grow up and stop being immature, and I need to welcome people who can say, hey, I like where you're going. I think I can help make sure we get there if we address this. So it goes both ends. I need to be willing to let every person on the Enneagram bring the gift that God's put inside of them. Also, I think if you're on that side, you need to figure out, how do I say my hesitations that need to be said so that we can guard this mission in a way that is still life-giving towards the mission. So it's a great learning. 7s are the adventurous. These are the joy bombs in the world. The people who love like anything shiny and new is kind of the wrap on them is like a kind of a sense of, okay, what's next, what's new, what's shiny. They typically like projects with a short-term timeline. They're intrigued. Their idea when they're stressed is, let's go on to Priceline.com or CarnivalCruise.com and see, okay, where can I go and have some quick adrenaline, some dopamine, some adventure in my life, because I'm addicted sometimes to new and exciting. And the sin there is gluttony, and not necessarily look out, Golden Corral, here I come, that type of gluttony, though I'm sure that can be it. It is, I want to overindulge the good things, even at risk of health. And that's not good. 7s, they say statistically, are the most prone to addictive behaviors and letting addiction set in, because it's taking that gift and perverting it of something new and exciting. So how do you best utilize a 7? What can that bring to the team? What should 7s watch for?
Creativity. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that we've seen with 7s, is just to have them in the space to where their creative minds can work. Yeah. Even if they're not like an artistic 4, the ideas that a 7 can have is just like, slow down, man, slow down. This is a lot, right? They also take you out of the comfort zone if you're not a 7. I know I don't know if you're supposed to number your children, but I would think that my oldest is probably
supposed to name them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's all right.
I can never remember her name, but I do remember she's a 7 probably. But anytime we go to a theme park, right? She's like 9. She is 9. She's not like it. Yeah. She is
metaphorically 9.
3. Yeah, there's.
How old is she really, Justin?
9. She's exactly 9. But she is the one that's like, let's ride this. Let's go on this. I want to ride that. And there's no way that I'm doing that without her. Yeah. Right? So she does take me out of the comfort zone, even though she's 9 years old, and I'm sure that will continue, but that's what 7s do. They move people out of the norm or out of a space that you're like, I'm not going to do that. Right. And usually I have a smile on my face. Afterwards. Yeah. So
they're encouragers.
They're great.
And literally they bring courage to an organization or to a person. 7s, you are God's gift to help someone have the courage to do what God wants them to do, but their circumstances are scaring them. So 7s, speak up. We need you. Awesome. Stay out of the casinos. 8s, the challenger. Okay. The challenger for the 8s. These are the people who have, I said the 3s want to run for mayor at the end, but they want to win. 8s want to win just as bad. They just don't care about an election. Okay. They're going to get there. 8s have more energy than any other number on the Enneagram. They are going to swing and they are going to fight. They are going to accomplish things. That's what 8s do. Their addiction to power, though, is the dark side. And specifically, when if God's gifted them to have the energy and the power to fight for those who are vulnerable, right? You see some great pictures like Moses represents the attributes of an 8. I will drive away the oppressor and lead them into promised land. That's great. The key is point the arrows out. Don't use your power to stuff down the oppressed. Use your power to pick them up and take them somewhere. The 8 has that energy. And as long as the 8s focus on serving others, that energy is life. But if that energy is pointed in, and that's the challenge, until someone matures, and I'm biased, I believe when you surrender to Jesus and the purpose God has for you, that 8 could feel like an 8-hole, okay? You can feel like, dude, I am just running over people and getting in my way. You got the power, but it's for a purpose. Mm-hmm. So we've had some great 8s on our team.
Phenomenal. Yeah. I think 8s, for me, 8s have been the most beneficial piece for my 3. Yeah. Meaning we both want to win, like you were saying, like, I want to win, right? But I also want people to like me, right? So there's so many times where an 8 would call that out. I'd be like, what do you really want, right?
Yeah.
Well, I really want to win at this, but I want to be a good human while I do it. Well, being a good human is probably not fluffing it up and probably actually just telling it as it is. It's where then you can be like, cool, same for you. Don't be a jerk, right? So it goes both ways, right?
Absolutely.
But an 8 at least starts that conversation for me where a lot of those other personality types, numbers, Enneagram pieces don't challenge me in that way.
Right.
Every single 8 that's been in my life, that's been a healthy 8, has moved me forward.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8s have the ability to be direct. They're the only ones that typically tend to naturally like conflict and could take it, right? So you got steel, just wrap that sucker with velvet, and it's going to be a win for the organization. Last one we'll hit today. Actually, it's the last one.
Right, yeah.
Is the 9. We'll call it the peacemaker or the connector, the bridge. The peacemaker, they have this God-given ability to connect two different people groups. They have the ability, here's what they have the ability to do, see all sides. They have the ability to see the perspective. They have the ability to hear both the entire episode of People's Court, right? And to be totally objective. They can see that ability to bring harmony, right? But the challenge could be laziness, not necessarily I need a hammock and I'm going to take a nap, though it can be that. But what we're referring to is relational laziness, avoiding the tough conversations, the hard conversations, and the pursuit of harmony over health. No one is better prepared for conflict on the Enneagram than a 9 because they naturally have connected people. They're God-given negotiators. They're God-given reconcilers. But the challenge is a 9 will tend to avoid any conflict at all costs and choose harmony over health. But you're not a peace faker, you're a peacemaker. And sometimes in order to make peace, you got to be able to disrupt harmony. So why are 9s such a gift to any organization?
I think you hit it. They're binders, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about galvanization, you talk about binding, you talk about bridge building, all of that.
Yeah.
That's what they do. That's what they do so well. And I've seen that in the workplace and I've seen that in family life to where it's like that person there, how are you getting along with them and with them? And it might be in a toxic situation, like you were saying. Are you faking it right now?
Right.
Or are you truly able to bridge that gap somehow?
Right.
There's just a lot to learn there from them on those specific pieces.
So if you're a 9, you probably naturally get super nervous before you have a tough conversation. And I just want to encourage you. No one's better at tough conversations than you because people are going to know you like them.
Yep.
And you're going to say it way softer than you can possibly imagine. But don't shortchange God's gift in your life by not utilizing that gift to connect people into wholeness, whether it's a family situation or work situation. Again, there's so much there, and we have a lot of resources on this one. We're not trying to promote any certain tool. I just think it's helpful to be self-aware, and so hopefully this would be something all of us can apply, at least understand. I do encourage you, if you're not yet really done a deep dive in your own soul, take some of those tests and read some of the things about you. You can Google it or check out those resources. Justin, it's fun. I know this has helped our organization a lot.
For sure.
I know it's helped my family a lot when I stopped trying to parent my kids to be mini versions of me.
Yes.
Good night. I wish I had known some of this earlier, but what I want them to do is be Christ's best version of them. And how do I help understand them? I think everybody around us wins when we become more curious about ourselves and others. So it's
great.
Cool. All right. Hey, thanks so much for listening. It really does matter to us that you're connected on this journey. And so we appreciate that. And if you have any questions, fire them in. We'd love to hear so we can talk about that. If it's a good question. If we don't like the question,
we won't even act like it came in.
No, but we love you and we want you to vote for us. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.